The Study of Language, 4th edition by George Yule. So today we are going to cover the second chapter of the book, as I have already covered the first chapter in my previous video. So the chapter we are going to discuss today is human and animal language. So this chapter has some main points, which are communication, how human and animal communicate, properties of human language, which are displacement, arbitrariness, productivity, cultural transmission, duality, talking to animals, chimpanzees and languages, Warsaw, Sarah and Lana, the controversy, Kanzi, using language. So these are the main points of the chapter that we are going to discuss in detail. So it is often asked that whether human and animal can communicate or not. So they can communicate, but not by speaking the language, because human language is very complex and unique, so that other creatures or animals cannot get it. So let's begin with our very first point, which is communication. So there are two types of signals: informative signals and communicative signals. So what are informative signals? Informative signals are the signals that we convey not through our communication but our appearance, and both animal and humans have this ability or use these informative signals. For example, if a person is sneezing and coughing, we, without him telling us, know that he is probably sick. So similarly in animals, for example a bird which is sitting on a branch of tree with the appearance of bird, we will tell that this is a black bird. So how did we come to this conclusion? Obviously by its appearance. So these are the informative signals. Now let's talk about communicative signals. So these are the signals conveyed by our communication. For example, a person telling another person that he belongs to a university or he is a medical student. That is a conclusion that was not made by just looking at his appearance, but it was assumed by his communication. Similarly in animals, if a bird is squeaking loudly, it means it is warning other birds from a danger. So these are the communicative signals. So these are the two types of communication. Now we will move on to our next point, which is properties of human language. So human can talk about language while using language. So this is a distinguished feature of human language that is called reflexivity, whereas dog do not bark about barking. So human language has distinguished features which we are going to describe further. So first feature is displacement. So humans can talk about past and future, and they can also talk about things that are not present. So this is called displacement, and we do not find this feature in animals. But here's a very interesting example of bees. Whenever a bee finds a source of nectar, it goes back to other bees and do a complex dance routine, in which a round dance means that the source of nectar is nearby, whereas wagging the tail means that the nectar is far. It is also displacement, but it is a very limited type of displacement because bees only go to a place which they recognize. So this was it for displacement. Now we are moving to arbitrariness. So arbitrariness means that there is no connection between a linguistic form and its meaning. For example, an Arabic example, qalb. Qalb means dog, but an English native speaker will never know it until he finds its meaning, because the meanings are not related to the word. For the word qalb do not define its meaning. So in many languages there is no connection of word with its meaning. Here is an example given from a child's book, in which the word ball is written in the way that it makes shapes of a ball. So it can somehow convey the meaning of a word. But overall, in all languages, there is no connection of words with their meanings. So the next example we have is onomatopoeic words. These are the words that are the sound. For example, the sound cuckoo is called cuckoo, or the sound crash is called crash. But these words, onomatopoeic words, are very rare in language. So the next point we are going to discuss is called productivity. Humans are constantly producing new words. This is called creativity and productivity, which means potential number of utterances is infinite in any human language, whereas animals lack this feature. Monkey has total 32 signed calls. Bees cannot indicate a new place, as we've seen in last example of displacement. They cannot indicate a new place, so this is a limited feature and also called limited reference. So the next point we are going to discuss is cultural transmission. We start discussing this point with an example. If a child that is born in Korea but brought up in America by English-speaking parents, but animals lack this feature. Whether a cat is born in a house or in streets, it will always meow. So humans have innate ability to speak language but no specific language. So next point we are going to discuss is duality. Human can say nib or nib, or they can say it in reverse, bin. They can use these words according to their situations, whereas dogs can say whoop in every situation. They cannot say oof or fo. They cannot convert the word, reverse the word, change the word according to situations. So this is the duality that is the future of human language. So these were the properties of human language. Now we are going to discuss animals interpret specific behavior and sound and particular sound stimulus or noise, but does not understand what it means. They are used to stimulus sound or a specific noise, so they react accordingly. For example, a human saying heel to a dog, to which a dog sometimes reacts because they are used to this sound and they know this sound, so they know how to react on this particular sound. Similarly, if a person is saying whoa to a horse, then horse knows this sound and it knows that whenever it hears this sound, he has to stop. So they are used to stimulus sound. They cannot produce human sound. For example, a baby and a dog is brought up in the same house, but the dog will never produce human speech, whereas the baby will start speaking the human language. Animals cannot speak human language. Furthermore, animals cannot speak other animals' language. For example, a horse can never do meow. So now we are going to discuss some experiments which were conducted on chimpanzees. So the next point is chimpanzees and language. In 1930, a baby and infant chimpanzee were brought up together by a scientist couple, Luella and Winthrop Kellogg. So the chimpanzee were able to understand more than 100 of words but did not produce any word, and chimpanzee's name was Goa. In 1940, another experiment was conducted on Vicky, a chimpanzee, by the scientist couple Catherine and Keith Hayes. So it was not easy for Vicky to produce any human language words, but she was able to speak words such as papa, mama and cup very difficultly in 5 years. She was raised in home for 5 years, and it proved that primates cannot speak human language because they have a vocal tract used in speech similar with gorillas and apes. So the next point we have is Waso or Washo. It is another experiment that was conducted by Beatrix and Ali, and they kept a chimpanzee named Washo. After 3 years, this chimpanzee was able to produce more than 100 words, but through sign language. This chimpanzee was trained to use a sign language, and it was also able to produce words such as food, drink. The next point we have is Sarah and Lana. Sarah was raised by Anne and David. So Sarah was taught to use symbol language. She could communicate with humans by using some symbols. She could use different symbols such as M for Mary and gives chocolate to Sarah. Here is an example from the book. But using symbol language is not less than using a vending machine and pressing different buttons randomly. So the next point we have is the controversy. So another experiment was conducted on Nim, the chimpanzee, and it was conducted by Herbert Terrace. He said that chimpanzee's behavior is a response of human demand. He said that chimpanzees work on clues. So they are very clever. They do this to get food. They behave and perform very sophisticated tricks to get the food. Whereas gardeners opposed this controversy, and they said Washoe was able to produce sounds without presence of humans. She was able to use her sign language even in the absence of human. They also did give examples of other chimpanzees as well. So the next point we have is Kanzi, another chimpanzee. So Sue Savage-Rambagh was training Bonobo, which is a pregnant chimpanzee called Matata, and was learning how to use sign language of Yerkish. Matata's babies were always with her. Matata did not learn well, but her baby Kanzi learned very well. Kanzi was able to use sign more than for 250 words. He also did use some gentle voices for banana, grapes and juices, and also did use signs for his favorite movies. Isn't that interesting? So the very last point we have is using language. So Waso and Kanzi were able to use symbols but not able to speak, whereas a 2 years human baby can speak to its caretaker, or a chimpanzee can convey its message by using language or sign language. However, babies can make complex speech sounds and novel utterances which other species cannot. So that's all for today's chapter, which was animal and human language. I hope it was helpful for you. We will cover further chapters in next videos.